YouTube's here. The latest from podnews.net with Podscribe using ChatGPT for brand safety. YouTubeMusic has officially launched its podcast service in the US. They've posted advice for podcast creators and badges, which we know to talk about listen on YouTube Music, in spite of the company suggesting we don't say that. It looks identical to our examination of the web version earlier this week, and two notable quotes from them. For those of you outside the United States, rest assured that we plan to bring podcasts in YouTube Music to other regions in the future. And we'll also offer you the option to directly upload your audio podcasts via RSS feeds to both YouTube and YouTube Music down the line. SiriusXM released its Q1 23 financials. Podcast revenue was up by 34%, though overall revenue declined by 2%. Cumulus Media also released their Q1 23 financials. Digital revenue, including podcast ads, was up by 23%, though total revenue slumped by 12%. And podcast ad spend grew by 32% last year in the UK, according to the IAB there. Clubhouse has made more than half of its total staff redundant. We have more bad news in our people section in just a tick. Pocket Casts have clarified the pricing changes for the podcast app. The price hike is for new subscribers only. What does Oxford Road's Dan Granger think about programmatic advertising on podcasts?
I think we're making some short-sighted compromises that are not going to end well.
Speaking to the Podcast Business Journal this week, he describes it as a way to get away from even associating hosts with the advertising. You can read his thoughts in the latest Podcast Business Journal newsletter, which you can subscribe to at podcastbusinessjournal.com. It's from your friends at Podnews. With hosting companies, Libsyn won a Stevie Award for product innovation, while Buzzsprout has added unlimited team members to its podcast hosting service. And our correction yesterday about Joe Rogan hopefully had the context to make it clear that Spotify pointed out that Joe Rogan's podcast is not up for renewal this year. They wouldn't tell us when it is up for renewal. It might have been renewed already, or it could be up for renewal next year. And sorry for our loose writing yesterday, which we've corrected on the web version. Trust us, if we discovered that Rogan's show wasn't being renewed, it wouldn't have been buried in a one-line correction in the middle of a newsletter. And a reminder, if you listen to this show on Apple Podcasts, you can get this show ad-free. Just check us out on the Apple Podcasts app. Not available on Android. And in People News, Kathy Doyle has been appointed to the Strategic Advisory Board of global podcast company Mission Based Media. She was at Macmillan Publishers. Scott McCarthy, the VP of ESPN Audio, and Pete Giannassini, Senior Director of Audio Programming, are both casualties of layoffs at the Disney-owned company. Ellie Chen, Jacob Pinter, and the team who ran Overheard at National Geographic have been laid off. National Geographic is majority-owned by Disney. And at Vice News, Sam Egan has been laid off. He tweets, along with the rest of my amazing colleagues on the Vice audio team. Also impacted the company's entire APAC newsroom and the Waypoint gaming site. It will continue producing some shows, though. And in podcast news, in the Pod News Weekly Review this week, an interview with Staffan Rossell from the PodX Group, and Amy Tucker talks about the Podcast Academy. And the good folks at Headliner have made it look very beautiful on YouTube, so thank you to them. A new kids series starts today from Fun Kids. Badger and the Blitz introduces listeners to Badger, a plucky pooch who becomes a war hero. The story is one of a boy's life and survival in a war-torn Britain alongside a four-legged friend who never loses hope. It's produced by Roxo. And WNYC and Gothamist have launched a new podcast, NYC Now, updated 3 times a day. It contains the latest WNYC newscasts. In a letter posted on Gothamist, Editor-in-Chief Audrey Cooper suggests the new podcast isn't a compliment to WNYC and Gothamist's longer-form material. This podcast is sponsored by Podscribe. Wondering if there's a better way we can be doing brand safety? Podscribe thinks so. It now uses ChatGPT to apply GARM labels. You can join the waitlist at podscribe.com/blog, and we thank them for their support this month. And that's the latest from our newsletter. To read all the stories and subscribe, we're at podnews.net.